A boy, his face ashen and distorted, violently writhes on the bed. With incomprehensible strength, he breaks out of his binds. In a guttural, evil voice, he growls something incoherent. The priest holds up a cross, momentarily repulsing the boy. "The power of Christ compels you," shouts the priest. The boy growls back, his black teeth gnashing between his snarled lips. "The power of Christ compels you!" That priest is about to get hurt. He doesn't fully know what he's up against, but this, he thinks, has got to be the work of the devil. And if that opening scene sounds a bit like a movie you once watched, perhaps one featuring a girl with a screw-top head who doesn't mind using rather colorful language, it's because the exorcism we're talking about today served as the basis of that movie. Yeah, we mean The Exorcist. The makers of The Exorcist didn't pull the plot out of a hat. It was actually very closely based on the exorcism we're featuring today. In the real version, the priest really did get hurt. That boy did things the little boy should not be able to do, but we'll come back to the actual exorcism later. First of all, we won't blame some of you more scientifically minded folks for saying there's just no way anyone could be possessed by the devil. The majority of the world, we would assume, thinks such a thing as demonic possession making little boys go mad is a made-up story created by folks who've allowed the idea of Satan to get in their heads. That's a good thing. Amen. After all, we used to burn witches on this planet, something that is a disgrace to humanity in modern times. So first of all, let's have a look at the people behind the exorcism. Were they, as the British might say, completely off their trolley? Stark raving mad? Deranged, fanatical nut jobs who liked bullying children with mental health issues? You probably already know that exorcisms are a real thing and can be performed provided the exorcist gets the green light from the church. According to news reports, the number of exorcisms in the USA has been on the increase as of late. In 2018, the BBC reported that the Vatican has invited 250 priests from all over the world to attend an exorcist training course. We kid you not. In 2020, the Associated Press called exorcisms commonplace. We're telling you this just so you understand that exorcisms are taken seriously by the church and aren't just something undertaken by lunatics suffering from meth psychosis. So when we tell you that a priest named Walter Halloran was there for the exorcisms in today's show, you can bet he was a real priest who earnestly wanted to rid the boy of the devil. There were a bunch of priests who saw that young boy do some incredible things, but not too many of them have talked in depth about it. The church was pretty hush-hush about the matter, with Halloran once saying, "I can't go on record. I never made an absolute statement about the things because I just didn't feel I was qualified." The priest, Raymond J. Bishop, was also there and he took notes. This is how we know what happened during those exorcisms, of which there were quite a few. When the devil squats in someone's head, he usually hunkers down. It was Bishop, a great name for a priest by the way, that really went into detail. He said 14 priests attended the exorcisms in total, and all of them were somewhat surprised by what they saw, with some also being skeptical. We'll come back to the skepticism. Okay, so in 1949, in the middle-class neighborhood of Belle Noire of St. Louis, Missouri, a 13-year-old kid living in a grand colonial-era house on Roanoke Drive decided he wanted to play around with a Ouija board. Once, this kid was talked about for his dealings with the devil in subsequent meetings with those priests. The press called him Ronald Doe or Robbie Mannheim, but his real name was Roland Hunkeler. The family was German-American. Young Roland was devastated after hearing that his beloved Aunt Harriet had passed away from complications of her multiple sclerosis. She was the one who taught him how to use the Ouija board. She was apparently a bit of a spiritualist. Not long before she kicked the bucket, the boy started hearing and seeing strange things around the house. According to the diaries of one of the priests, both the kid and his grandma started hearing a dripping sound, although there was no source of water. The date was January 15th. That same day, the boy started hearing scratching noises, again with seemingly no source. They seemed to be coming from somewhere under the floorboards. You could blame mice for that, but not for a shaking picture of Jesus Christ that was hung on the wall. This went on for 10 days, after which there were 3 days of silence, according to what the priest wrote. Then, the boy said for another 3 days every night he heard the sound of squeaking shoes on his own bed. January 26th was the day his aunt passed, and that's when things started to get really crazy. The sounds around the house got worse, and now the boy thought it must be his dead aunt. He, along with his mom and grandma, got out the Ouija board and tried to make contact with the aunt. The mom asked, "If you are Tilly, knock 3 times. A gush of air then hit all of them and 3 bangs came from under the floorboards. The mom then said, "If you are Tilly, tell me positively by knocking 4 times. 4 knocks were heard by all the party. They then heard a scratching sound on the blanket on the nearby bed, Roland's bed. These strange goings-on kept happening, and so on February 17th, Roland went to stay at the parsonage where Minister Reverend Schultz lived. He wanted to see if anything strange happened around young Roland. So far, when weird things did happen, he was always close to the source. His mom thought the spirit of his aunt, or possibly something worse, was inside of him. That night at the minister's house, some strange things indeed happened. Schultz said he also heard scratching sounds close to Roland, along with hearing vibrations coming from the bed. A chair, said the minister, also tipped over. February 26 was the day things really kicked off. Not only were the scratching sounds heard, but actual scratches appeared on Roland's body. Sure, he could have done this by himself, but the diary states that the mom was there when some of those scratches happened, as if by magic. She said it looked as though they'd been done by claws. This was in the diary anyway. It's a pity she wasn't around when the story became well known after the making of The Exorcist. She went to see Father Albert Hughes of St. James Catholic Church in Mount Rainier, who told her to pray and bless the house with holy water and blessed candles. But that didn't seem to help matters. The diary states that when the mom had just lit some candles, a comb flew across the room and knocked them over. The mom and Roland started seeing all sorts of unexplainable things. At one point, some fruit flew across the room. Another time, a kitchen table just flipped. One day, Roland was sitting in a chair and it turned around by itself. Then a coat took a trip across the room and a Bible ended up at Roland's feet. Was this a case of collective hysteria? Was Roland somehow furtively making all these things happen? Even the school sent him home more than one time because the teacher said his desk started spinning around. Remember, this was all in the diary, so you have to take the priest's word for it. Mrs. Doe didn't question that something out of this world was going on. She saw things for herself. One day she was filling a bottle with holy water and it flew across the room. Somehow it didn't smash. A bit later, she was lighting a candle next to Roland's bed when the bed moved with her and him on it. The mom did what any ultra-pious person would do and took her son to be baptized again. Only during the process, Roland went absolutely mad. She then sent him to stay with relatives, and according to the diary, scratch marks and what the diary called brandings appeared on the boy's body. At one point, Roland had a 3-day stay at Georgetown University Hospital. This is where the first of the exorcisms happened, and the priest who performed it was Father Hughes. He would later relay what happened to other priests. As per the start of this video, the boy slipped out of his binds. He then ripped a spring out of the mattress and used it to cut the priest's arm. Due to this injury, the exorcism was aborted. After that, Hughes kept mostly quiet about the matter and secluded himself from society for a fair few years. It was later said that the event caused him a considerable amount of trauma. On March 9th, Father Bishop saw the seemingly possessed boy for the first time. He too said he saw the mattress moving by itself and young Roland looking worse for wear. 2 days later, both he and another priest, Father Bodern, visited the house again. This time they both said prayers above Roland's bed and blessed him with a religious relic stated as a piece of bone from the forearm of St. Francis Xavier. Relatives of Roland were also in attendance. In all, it said 49 people witnessed the possession of Roland Doe. After leaving a special crucifix under Roland's bed, the priests took off. A few hours later, banging could be heard from his room. When the relatives opened the door, the sight that greeted them was an overturned bench, a moved bookcase, and that crucifix was on the other side of the room. The mattress was shaking at this point, with Roland screaming, "Aunt Tilly, stop! Please stop!" A few days later, the two priests performed the ritual prayers of exorcism over Roland, but it seems that wasn't good enough. According to the diaries, Roland was moved around a lot. And now, with permission from Archbishop Joseph E. Ritter, other priests performed the rites of exorcism. Some rituals happened in Alexian Brothers Hospital in South St. Louis and others at various houses of relatives. Priests would stand above Roland's bed and usually recite the words, "I cast thee out, thou unclean spirit," along with the least encroachment of the wicked enemy and every phantom and diabolical legion. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, depart and vanish from this creature of God. The diaries state that during some of the rituals, Roland would writhe around as usual like a beast. Scratches appeared on his body. He would often curse at the priests, a la the exorcist girl, and he'd sometimes spit, vomit, and pee in the bed. He'd also use Latin, even though Roland on his better days couldn't speak Latin. If you think this story can't get any more unbelievable, the diary said during one of the rituals, a picture in the form of scratches appeared on Roland's calf. It was described as the devil with webs stretching from his arms. During other exorcisms, it said a pitchfork would snake down Roland's leg. The priests also said at times an X would appear on his chest. Roland was later taken to another town by train. Father Bowden was his caretaker during the journey, who, it said, was whacked in the balls by Roland out of the blue. The father said Roland laughed and said to him, "That's a nutcracker for you, isn't it?" April 18, 1949, the night of the last exorcism, in attendance were relatives who watched Father Borden perform the ritual. On this occasion, the father tried to ascertain who it was inside the boy. The diary says Roland said he was one of the fallen angels. The The priest shouted back, "Satan, Satan, I am Saint Michael. I command you, Satan, and the other evil spirits to leave this body, in the name of Dominus, immediately, now, now, now." Suddenly, after one violent spasm, Roland just slumped on the bed in a heap. Then, as if coming out of a dream, he looked at the priest and feebly uttered the words, "He is gone." Roland later explained that at the moment of Satan leaving his body, he had a vision of Saint Michael wielding a fiery sword and vanquishing the devil. But had Satan gone? Was he ever even there? The thing with this case is for many years it remained a secret. In 1949, the Washington Post talked about an exorcism, but there were very few details, not even a name for the victim or the priests. It wasn't until the 1970s that the news picked it up again and started giving the story more details. One of the stories said, the only physical remains of the exorcism in Mount Rainier are the steps and wall surrounding the house where the boy lived. The house burned down years ago and the lot is vacant. This was not true. Many things the media said about the case weren't true, which is why investigations into the matter took place later. Then, in 1985, the Washington Post wrote a story titled "Youth's Bizarre Symptoms Led to 1949 Exorcism." Later, in 1993, "Possessed: The True Story of an Exorcism" was published. Everything was then brought into question. Sure, there was a boy who might have looked to have been possessed at times, but the authors of the investigation said people had joined up a lot of dots after hearing stories. Father Halloran had indeed been there during some of the exorcisms, and he did say he saw scratches, but he also noted that those scratches appeared when he wasn't looking. He told the press the words "evil" and "hell" formed on Roland's body. He also said he saw the mattress move, and at one point Roland flew at him and broke his nose. That was all true. But was Roland just an out-of-control maniac kid who likely in his adult years went on to graduate from pretending to be possessed to committing serious crimes or being locked up in an institution where the walls are soft and they feed you buckets of Valium with your breakfast? In 2004, Father Halloran passed away. He was the last of the priests who attended those exorcisms. In one of his last interviews, he said Roland had gone to live a rather ordinary life. Maybe the boy was just mentally unhinged and enjoyed getting off of school. As for Father Hughes, the investigators couldn't find any proof that he had attended an exorcism and after had a nervous breakdown, nor could they find anything that showed the kid had been taken to the hospitals we mentioned. As for those secret diaries, they were real enough, but the priest much of the time relayed what he'd only heard. He might also have made some things up. We'll never know because they all died once the story got some legs. Sure, the priests and the parents might have seen scratches and things flying around, but skeptics think Roland was a clever little devil and managed to orchestrate everything. Why priests would believe this was demonic possession was explained by one of the many skeptics. He said, to psychiatrists, Rob Doe suffered from mental illness. To priests, this was a case of demonic possession. To writers and film and video producers, this was a great story to exploit for profit. Those involved saw what they were trained to see. The only person who could maybe explain the truth of what really went down is Roland himself, who, if he is still alive, will now be creeping toward the age of 90. Let's hope when we say, "Is there anybody there? Is there anybody there?" old Roland might leave us a comment below this video. Now you really need to watch the real-life exorcism even scarier than the movie, or meet the big man himself and 50 things you didn't know about Satan.